Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 6 in our SAFE series. Today, we're going to be talking about base milestones on objective evaluation of working systems. So this is under the SAFE Lean and Agile Principles section. And with me today is Kumar Datatran, one of our partners here and one of our SAFE experts. Hello, Kumar. How are you today?
Doing great, Mike. How's it going?
Fantastic. Doing well. It's sunny here in February. That's a win in my part of the country. So usually it's pretty cloudy here. So want to get right into this and start actually talking about number 5, base principles, and wanted to get your perspective on this in terms of what does this mean in the entire, when we're talking about this series, kind of the Lean and Agile principles in our SAFE series. What does this subject matter really mean in terms of the whole when you're looking at the entire Lean Agile principles ecosphere of SAFE itself?
Yeah. So these principles are created. SAFE is a scaling mechanism, so it's scaling from team level Agile, using Scrum or Kanban or something, to multiple teams working aligned and working on something together, right? And so this principle is really describes or should describe how teams should demonstrate working systems to their stakeholders on a regular cadence. And so, in Scrum, of course you have the sprint review, right? The sprint review is an example of this, even though this principle is a SAFE principle, it's an example of that. And SAFE uses Scrum, at the team level, also uses Kanban. But in Scrum, at the end of every sprint, there's a demonstration of completed work. And one of the things that leads to is some guidance, some information for the product owner and the team to base their objective evaluation of what they need to build next. And so this, of course, extends beyond the team level demonstrations of working software to the art or the Agile release train, the collection of teams, and how they coordinate their work together to demonstrate working solutions that will allow stakeholders, business people, to objectively assess the progress that was made and whether or how it may impact their milestones that have been planned.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of scaled organizations that work on big initiatives or have a process, they have like a phase gate process or things like that. How does this relate back to something like a phase gate process, or how would it compare up? How would you kind of match the two up or explain to someone who's in a phase gate process what that would mean to them if they were to look more in this direction?
Yeah, well, at phase gates, it's not necessarily based on working software, right? An evaluation of working systems. You're phasing based on some milestones that are sort of artificial. All right, we've got our requirements completed. We've done our analysis. We've designed our architecture. Great, we're 70% done. Are you really? Well, actually, no, you're not done any of the coding at all. You've gotten the requirements done. You've maybe done some design, but you haven't done anything to actually build and test those requirements. Build and test the designs, build and test what you've analyzed to make sure that what you think is going to work a certain way actually works a certain way, right? And so to those people, I'd say that you're incurring a lot of risk in all the months that you spend in these different phase gates up until the point where you start developing, right? And so you're pushing the risk all the way to the right, where when you're basing milestones on objective evaluation of working systems, you're iterating through those requirements on a regular cadence.
That actually leads me to my next question. How does that look different on when you're basing your milestones on objective evidence, right? How does that feel to someone that actually when they're working on it versus if they're working in a more phase gate type approach or something that's not based on those objective evidence elements?
Well, I think it can be both rewarding and stressful. Rewarding because you're seeing the fruits of your labor being used potentially much sooner than in a phase gate approach.
Right? Way earlier, right? You're expecting maybe if I'm on the house side of that stream, I'm thinking I'm not going to be involved for a while, whereas you're getting pulled up right in the front end, right?
Yeah. On the flip side, it can be more stressful, especially if an organization hasn't adopted Agile top to bottom and side to side and so on, because requirements may still be. There's sort of like this dichotomy, right? The organization may be a little schizophrenic, that they want certain reports a certain way, but they want to support the agile release trains to work a certain way, and so it's really stressful for the people doing the work to be able to serve these two masters, right?
Yeah.
That may be a topic for another maybe sort of some of the dysfunctions that we see as coaches. But the principle alone is really simple to understand. You iterate, you demonstrate, you learn from what you demonstrated, and you make adjustments to your future plan. It's PDCA: plan, do, check, act, or adjust on a cadence, right? In the case of SAFe, they've adopted Scrum as the base framework. So you're doing it every 2 weeks, and every program increment, you're doing a system demonstration at least once. Ideally, you're doing that also every iteration or sprint.
It really feels like
once.
It really feels like it takes that idea of iterative and it boils it into a practical way to experience that and to understand how it can be valuable to you and how it feels. And probably, like you said, maybe a little uncomfortable in the beginning if you're not used to doing it that way. But it certainly seems to play well. It gives it a home. It gives iterating a home inside of the entire flow of the work, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it does, and it's a way for organizations to see something on a regular cadence, right? The system demos, which are integrated demonstrations of working software integrated between all of the teams that are part of the Agile release train, is meant to be that cadenced synchronizing event where the teams are deploying their code, they're integrating their code all the time, ideally, not just a one-time thing every program increment, but they're doing this on a regular basis, every day even. But they're demonstrating working solutions to their stakeholders and their business folks.
Are there mechanisms that go alongside of the iterative part, the smaller chunk or pieces part, that you're doing as well to kind of look at things from a programmatic standpoint that blend in well with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the system demo, right? So the system demo is the sort of the next layer up at the art level, the Agile release train level. And if you go up another level, so how do you coordinate multiple Agile release trains and their demonstrations of software at the solution level? When SAFe has levels, lots of levels. So at the solution level, there's what's called a solution demo, and that occurs on a cadence as well, usually synchronized with the cadence of the Agile release train. So the Agile release trains are on a 12-week cadence. Then every 12 weeks, all the Agile release trains will coordinate their work that belongs to a solution and demonstrate that solution to the stakeholders. So it's sort of a fractal. The bigger you go, but the cadences remain the same. The purpose remains the same. The principle remains the same. It's base your milestones on objective evidence. Are we on track? Are we going to be able to deliver what we are committing to our clients? Are we going to be able to take advantage of these new products that we've created, or do we need to shift our milestones, our objectives a little bit?
So it allows you for micro patterns inside of macro patterns that are very easy to understand and implement. Okay,
that's right. And of course, at a certain point, it breaks down, right? And there's a certain amount of resiliency that needs to exist in the organization for these fractals to work efficiently, right? And so the resiliency in terms of code deployments and the practices of the development teams, the practices they use to deploy their code, the tests that they write, the automation that's present, all these things have a part to play in how efficiently teams are able to deploy and deploy to a production-like environment and get feedback right? And so it's easy to say base milestone on objective evaluation of working systems, but there's a lot that goes behind it to make this principle come alive. Discipline, practical guidance, an environment that embraces learning and failure to a certain extent, because these teams are going to go through a lot of learning as they figure out how to deliver on a 2-week cadence, how the team of teams is going to figure out how to deliver on a 12-week cadence.
I would imagine with that structure of micro systems or micro cadences inside of macro cadences that communication, collaboration, efficiency, effectiveness, their capabilities to collaborate well would absolutely lend towards the execution side of this, whether it's theoretically simple and easy to understand versus, tactically effective in terms of the execution side. You said like a lot of those other disciplines, right? This discipline of being able to communicate and collaborate would be core or root into this, although it probably would have been in a phase gate system as well. It's just that you're tuning your system more towards modern needs and modern demands that are out
That's
there.
Right.
The timeliness of things and how values looked at, right? So
that's right. I mean, I think these principles are such where they're so broad, but to do it well in a large, multi-team program or multi-program solution, it just doesn't happen poof like that, right? There needs to be some foundational elements in place where leadership has empowered the teams with certain decision-making authority for the types of things that they have the responsibility and the authority to do, like, testing is part of the team's responsibility. They build quality in, so every iteration, every sprint, what they're putting out is potentially shippable, which is what Scrum has been saying all along, which,
right.
Any Agile team has been saying all along. But what we see in practice is, the test teams are separated from the development teams. And so there's no resiliency there, right? It's hard to say, yes, we're going to base our milestone on objective evaluation of working systems, because, well, we don't know if they're working. It hasn't been tested yet, or the testing isn't done yet, things like that. So that's the type of resiliency that I'm talking about, that these types of principles help encourage and guide organizations to good, sound engineering practices that predate Agile by, decades.
I think that's something that we spend a lot of time on as partners within our organization and working with our clients, is that the approaches, frameworks, these types of structures are wonderful. They don't replace good, sound fundamentals, right? In terms of human to human interaction, in terms of the environmental structures. You talked about empowerment, you talked about psychological safety, you talked about other things like that, right? Those all make the wheel turn, depending on, and you just pick the wheel, right? If this is a new wheel, great. A more modern wheel, it's got a radial tire, it's great. It's it's going to be better performance. That's fantastic. But if the wheel doesn't turn, tire doesn't really matter, right? I think that's very, very interesting point to maintain as you go through and learn these things, is to constantly reinspect your fundamentals and make sure that those fundamentals are functioning, because this has worked in places, right? These approaches and these mindsets, these concepts, principles have worked.
You don't need SAFe for these things to work, right? SAFe is a good construct. It's a good model. The principles make sense. Or you don't need it if you have really good engineering practices in place and there's good alignment between teams. These things naturally happen.
Yeah,
they naturally happen. I've seen it happen, and SAFe allows it to happen a little quicker in some cases, in many cases.
It's a starting point, not a destination, right?
Correct.
Exactly. Yeah,
correct.
Exactly. Well, this is excellent. Any other things to follow up with, Kumar, before we end today's session?
No. This principle is fairly easy to understand, but like all principles, they're a little hard to implement. So best of luck, and contact us. Reach out if you have issues or problems or success stories that you want to share. Leave them in the comments below, and hope to hear from you.
Thank you again, everybody, for joining. We look forward to seeing you in the next session of the series.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.